Oh, hey friend, it's you again. I see that you've managed to survive your outing in the Hoodrick Woods and have made your way to the wonderfully inviting land of Barduria. Hurry, come inside. A blizzard seems to be starting. You're quite lucky that you managed to find a tavern before the wind really picked up. Let's get you a cup of Oolifer and a bowl of stew to keep you warm as we wait out the storm, and I'll tell you all about the inhabitants of this fine land. Barduria is home to the Bardur. They weren't exactly the most imaginative when naming this bleak, snow-covered desert. Well, it was the name chosen after they rolled for it. It's actually how the Bardur make their most important decisions. They roll a giant die off a cliff. A new Jarl? Which tribe to attack next? Whether or not the next village needs a new tavern? Yep, same process. Rolling a die. The Bardur believes that the gods show their will through chance, and any results are divinely guided. Many Bardur even keep a tiny die on them just in case. But I might be jumping too far ahead. First, let's talk about how they actually got here and why they stay. As I told you last time, the Bardur are actually an offshoot of the Hoodrick, and, for whatever reason, they broke off and migrated out to these frozen wastes. The first few years were brutal, but these resourceful Polytopians managed to eke out a fairly decent existence. They built homes, they found food, kept warm, and quickly regained their numbers despite what Barduria could throw at them. As time went on, their culture would deviate from their former tribe, and they would periodically return to the Hoodrick Woods to raid the settlements of their bow-wielding kin. Historians tend to agree that by the time of the failed siege of the Hoodrick city of Halarda Karn, the Bardur were their own distinct tribe, both culturally and politically. Because of this cultural connection, the Hoodrick and Bardur have a long-standing rivalry, and both sides often take turns raiding the other, with no signs of stopping anytime soon. And why do they stay? Well, pride, really. The Bardur believe that braving the hostility of Barduria has made them strong, and that strength is something they prize above all else. This pride has led them to create the Beanark, a coming-of-age ceremony that all Bardur must endure on their 3rd birthday. Their child is handed a spear, a tent, and some basic supplies, and sent out into the berry-filled forest, where they must survive the night. Those who come home in the morning are celebrated, and those who do not are quickly forgotten. You must prove that you can survive out here if you wish to live here, as Barduria does not go lightly on the weak. But life in Barduria isn't always bad. Despite the unforgiving climate and regular Barian attacks, Barduria is home to some hot springs that the Bardur like to relax in. The comforts of warm water almost make life out here worth it. Most cities are built around these springs, making them a defining feature of Bardurian culture. The Bardur are also known to throw festivals and parties, such as the joyous Forgul Festival, where there is singing, drinking, dancing right before the start of the next blizzard season. One last hurrah before everyone's snowed in for a while. Finding edible plants in the tundra isn't always easy. But, thankfully, Oolifer berries are practically everywhere in Barduria. They like the cold and will actually only grow if the weather's chilly enough, but not too chilly, of course. They're tangy, nutritious, and not a terrible meal by themselves, but you'll need more than a handful to stave off hunger. Still, despite not being very flashy, a diet of Oolifer berries is good enough substitute if Barian meat isn't available. Speaking of Barians, let's take a moment to discuss what's probably the most iconic creature in Barduria. Barians are fierce and voracious predators, and there's good reason that most Bardurians travel in groups. It takes quite a bit of effort to bring one of these beasts down, but the Bardur have made it their specialty. A gaggle of hunters with spears, bows, and clubs is usually enough, especially if they can manage to circle the creature, and then it's Barian meat for dinner. For some odd reason, Barians can also be tamed, but only if you manage to tug on their ears a few times. No one's quite too sure why this is, but it's why you can see legions of Bardurian cavalry riding these hulking beasts without being eaten first. And no conversation about Bardurian cuisine would be complete without talking about what you're drinking right now. Oolifer. Oolifer is a spirited concoction of pine needles, hot water, and rabbit fat that the Bardur are known to brew. They make all kinds of Oolifer, some stronger for parties, some weaker for children, and with a variety of secret ingredients for taste. It's not my favorite, personally, but when you live out here, you make do with what you can get. Oh, hey, see that Bardurian that just came in? The one wearing the Barian pelt? That's a Baergøff, the strongest and most daring Polytopian you'll find out here. Where'd they get the pelt? Well, that's a symbol of their first solo Barian kill, and that kill is just one step into becoming a Baergøff. You see, any Bardurian crazy enough to complete the 5 tests of strength is given the privilege of wearing the pelt, and allowed into the fraternal order of the Baergøff. What are the 5 tests? Well, one is to strangle a Barian to death in its own den without weapons. One is carrying a few boulders for a mile and throwing them past a marker. There's also something about climbing a mountain naked, I think. I can't remember the other 2. Still, the pelt says, this is someone who's managed to do the impossible, so I'd steer clear if I was you. The name Baergøff effectively means elite Barian hunter, but you won't see them hunting nearly as much as you'll see them on the battlefield. Why? Well, the Baergøff aren't technically soldiers, or even officially part of the Bardurian military. But the Jarl uses them for impossible tasks that need to get done. Leaving a whole bunch of adrenaline junkies with nothing to do is just asking for trouble. So using them as special forces just makes sense. That direct control by the Jarl puts them on the same elite soldier category as the Yorthwober, Shapo, or Amok's mercenaries, and they're given the appropriate level of respect by rank-and-file Bardur. In combat, the Baergøff don't really differ much from their normal Bardurian counterparts, outside their lust for the extreme, of course, but there are a few changes. First, they don't use clubs, but fashion a sort of wearable bludgeon out of a Barian's paw, which isn't just effective, but it also matches their attire. The Baergøff also aren't big fans of bows, and prefer to use javelins instead, as the heavier weight tends to work better when hunting Barians. Baergøff javelineers are even able to accurately throw their weapons from a moving boat with great accuracy. The last big change is how the Baergøff decorate their buildings. They like to coat their roofs with green grass, which they believe works as a sort of camouflage. If only they weren't surrounded by white snow everywhere. And that's the story of the Bardur. A tale of incredible hardiness, resourcefulness, and Barian hunting. Oh, look at that. The blizzard seems to have stopped. Well, finish your drink and stew, and be on your merry way. Maybe we'll cross paths again someday.